130 National Guard, State Defense Force, Alaska Naval Militia are helping. 64 Red Cross folks are out there as well. DOT, DNR, DEC, Department of Health, FEMA, Army Corps, Coast Guard, local governments are all pulling together and working to get folks, to get these communities up and running. Native corporations, tribal organizations, ANTHC, regional health corporations, nonprofits, private companies, everyone, once again, is pulling together on this. So I want to thank everyone for working on this and continue to work on this. There's about 103 damaged homes identified. 34 folks are in shelters as of last night still, mostly in Gullivan. That number keeps falling as the recovery continues. State individual assistance programs will open online on Monday. Telephone registration will open next Wednesday. So go to, if you want to, go to ready.alaska.gov/storm. That's ready.alaska.gov/storm. And again, don't wait to repair your home if you're able. Keep your receipts, keep your invoices for those that are working on their home for potential reimbursement. I've requested an additional $10 million from the legislature. State funding is already assisting with recovery efforts. And so with that, what I'd like to do at this point is turn this over to Congresswoman Peltola to say a few words, and then we'll go to Administrator Criswell. Congresswoman?
Thank you so much, Governor Dunleavy. I want to thank you for giving me a chance to join your press conference. I want to thank my fellow senators. Senator Murkowski is out boots on the ground today, assessing the situation up in Nome, I believe. Senator Sullivan is doing his Marine reserve duties. He had a commitment to that, and that is something as Alaskans we can certainly understand. And I especially want to thank FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell for coming all the way up here right on the heels of her trip to Puerto Rico. I have a lot of appreciation for the State Emergency Management Services Director, Brian Fisher, and all of the coordination between all of the state agencies as well as the federal agencies. The United States Coast Guard is allowing me to tag along with them tomorrow on their assessments and their flyovers. And I really want to thank the people of Western Alaska for their preparedness. It was very short notice on their part, all of the first responders in the communities, and just the widespread effort and community esprit de corps in making sure that all of the community members were watching out for each other. I understand today that the Department of Interior has appropriated $2.6 million through the Bureau of Indian Affairs for 45 communities who will receive food and water and other essential supplies as we go into winter. Like the governor said, this is a really critical time because we just have 3 or 4 weeks before the onset of freeze up, and that presents its own unique challenges. I just arrived from Washington, D.C. It's really important for me to see firsthand what the damages are and to hear firsthand, face-to-face with residents of the impacted communities. And I'm looking forward to hearing their stories and taking those stories back to Washington, D.C. and making sure that we get appropriate federal funding in a timely manner. So it means a lot to me to be able to be here and be included in these efforts. So I really thank you. And thank you, Governor Dunleavy. Guyana.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And so next we're going to have FEMA Administrator Criswell come up to the podium and say a few words.
Thank you, Governor. It's really great to be with everybody here today, and I would like to first just start by thanking all of the first responders, all of the emergency responders who have been on the front lines responding to this and making sure that everybody was safe. It's a great testament that there was no loss of life during this event. And Governor Dunleavy and Director Brian Fisher would like to also thank you for inviting me here to see this firsthand. The relationship that we have and the partnership we have with Alaska is deeply valued by all of our employees. I'd also like to thank Senators Murkowski and Sullivan, as well as Representative Peltola, for everything that you're doing. And I'm really looking forward to our visit together tomorrow. And finally, just really want to recognize the team that FEMA has here across our FEMA Region 10 and our Alaska area office for their ongoing and continued support to our state partners as well as our tribal nations. I'm really proud to say that this has been an extremely coordinated response effort, executed in support of our state partners with our federal and nonprofit partners. From the actions of our National Guard, from the Alaska State Defense Force, as well as the Alaska Naval Militia, who have been on the ground in the hardest hit areas doing everything that they do so well, to our nonprofit organizations that have been helping to deliver food and water to the remote villages, as well as setting up shelters for families so they can have a safe place to sleep. And then to our many, many federal partners who have been here on the ground, the U.S. Coast Guard, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Indian Health Service, EPA, and the Denali Commission. This is an example of a true team effort. So building on that momentum, I am pleased to announce that today, President Biden did approve the governor's request for a major disaster declaration. And I'd like to thank President Biden for swiftly acting on this request as it enables FEMA to deliver federal resources to the communities who are going to need our help the most. This declaration includes support to the following regional educational attendance areas: Bering Strait, Keshunamute, Lower Kuskokwim, and Lower Yukon. Assistance can include grants for temporary housing and home repairs. It can also include low-cost loans for uninsured losses, as well as going to help reimburse the cost that the state is incurring for the emergency measures that they are taking right now to stabilize the incident in these communities. I wanted to get to Alaska as soon as possible to meet with our partners and see firsthand, so I could be here on the ground to see firsthand the level of damage that has been caused by the West Coast storm as a result of Typhoon Merbok, which was sadly just one of the historic storms that our nation faced this week. Before coming here to Alaska, I was visiting with the resilient people of Puerto Rico as they began taking their first steps towards recovery after Hurricane Fiona. And in the Gulf of Mexico right now, we're closely monitoring a tropical depression that we think is soon going to turn into a hurricane. But here in Alaska, 1,000 miles of coastline and the communities which lie in it are navigating the aftermath of this storm. But it's one of the strongest storms in the state's history. But we have seen that the state was undoubtedly ready to respond to this storm and proved its capability to protect its people regardless of the threats that have been headed this way. When it comes to our role, when it comes to FEMA's role in supporting this response, between our Alaska area office, which has held a permanent presence here in the state since 2007, and our national and regional incident management teams that were here for an exercise when the storm hit, we had some of our best people already on the ground well in advance of the storm. This level of engagement and readiness alongside our state and local partners is something that we at FEMA take very seriously because it is our job to show up whenever and wherever we are needed. But it takes strong, experienced partners like we have here in Alaska to help meet and succeed in this mission. Alaskans are a prepared and resilient people because you simply must be. And you regularly face some of the most extreme weather among any area of our country. But that does not mean that Alaska and the rural and tribal lands within it are immune to the severe impacts that accompany storms of this magnitude. With winter coming in a matter of weeks, the governor has given me a briefing and made it very clear that time is of the essence. And so we are going to be able to deliver assistance to support those needs to help stabilize this incident in this critical time period. Tomorrow, I'm looking forward to traveling to Nome to see firsthand the impacted communities and understand the unique and complex nature that the recovery challenges are going to be. And in the day ahead, we're going to continue to work with the Alaska Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, as well as the local and tribal partners, to complete damage assessments. These assessments are going to help give us a holistic picture of the damages and help inform our next steps of the recovery process. We are also going to remain embedded with the State Emergency Operations Center to support the coordination of any operations relating to mass care, search and rescue, or any other air operations. And finally, as we progress forward, we must never forget that we are one team working with one shared goal. Governor, I am confident that we have the right people here working side by side with your staff to make sure that we're getting help to those who need it most. And you have my commitment to make sure that we're doing everything we can. Thank you.
Thanks. So thank you, Administrator Criswell. We're glad you're here, and we do look forward to working with you. Next, we're going to have Commissioner Sachs come up and give a short report.
Well, thanks from FEMA. That really is incredible news. We are getting after it with the National Guard and the State Defense Force and Naval Militia. So just a few things that have happened over the past couple of days. It's changing by the hour. Roughly 160 members going out to Nome, to Bethel, to the satellite communities. That is spread out over 2,400 miles. So this is quite an effort. This is very big for a relatively small National Guard. So far, 8 communities are assisted. We have many more that are coming tomorrow. 3,000 miles flown. And as far as the debris pickup, again, changing by the hour, but incredibly already about 20 tons that we've picked up as far as debris. Wanted to run around the horn and just show a couple of the big things that we're doing in the smaller communities. Governor and I were out there a couple days ago. So, as I mentioned, for the hubs, we have several in Nome and also in Bethel. Between the two, we have well over 100 troops out there. But as far as Galvin, that's one place we did visit a couple days prior. Incredible devastation, as you might expect, a typhoon going through. But they have an issue right now because they have too much equipment, not enough operators. So Mayor Charlie Brown, he was just out talking to the troops, and he said, by chance, does anyone have the qualifications to run a big rig? And sure enough, we had a couple people within the National Guard that were able to jump on the equipment, and they alone, with the people in Galvin, moved about 15 tons in a day and a half. So very good news there. Shaktoolik, as far as the debris, we moved about 20 cords of wood there. So the good news story is they're going to have some firewood, and we were able to help them in that endeavor. So Hooper Bay, another place the governor and I were at a couple days ago, taking pallets with the guardsmen, with the State Defense Force, and we are rebuilding the sidewalks there. So taking something that was going to be debris in itself and using it for a very good purpose. We are going to hit Chivac tomorrow. New Talk, lots of debris removal going forward there as well. As far as just another good news story, I want to mention on the bottom, Bethel. We are very grateful for this. We had a group of military that were just walking the streets, and somebody stopped by and named Stephen Maxey III, and they just struck up a conversation about moose. And Stephen said, I just got a moose, and if you'd like some, I'd love to share. So they all sat down together, and they were going forward as a team, and that is exactly what we want to see within Alaska. So the effort is ongoing. We do expect this to increase by the day, by number, and also community served. And we're taking the inputs. And for Galvin, I did just get a request for the post office. If someone from Galvin is listening, we're going to get to the post office, help clean that up, and that will be fixed in the near future. And with that, I will pass it off to Department of Transportation.
Thank you, General Sachs. The Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities has made a lot of progress just over the past 24 hours, making sure the resources are available and on the ground in the affected communities. We've issued approximately $15 million in emergency procurements at this stage. That gets contractors on the ground and moving to make sure these damages get repaired. We've also been in discussions with the Federal Highway Administration, and we've submitted a notice of intent today to secure Fed Aid Highway Emergency Relief Funds, which will allow us to also work through the federal highway channels to complete the repairs to the damaged roads and those facilities and that infrastructure. Contract personnel are on the ground. They're working right now on the Nome Front Street, Nome Council Road. We have equipment, we have operators. That work is right now happening and getting done. We also engaged a contractor just today to begin work in Gullivan, Elam, and Shaktoolik. And we're going to begin work right away to repair those roads. Gullivan, the community roads, in Elam, the Front Street and the road to Moses Point, and then, of course, in Shaktoolik, the road in Shaktoolik. We're also identified some damages in Shishmaref and Teller. Those are being repaired by our local M&O staff, and those roads are passable, and we're in good shape there. All of these roads, all of these projects have challenges. Many of the roads are indiscernible of where the road actually is, and so we are having to send surveyors out to mark the center lines of these roads and to make sure that when we rebuild these roads, they're going back in the same place where they were before. So there's some pretty good challenges there, but we're also having some good partnerships with communities to make sure that we're covering all our bases, and that as we go out there, people are informed and they know what we're up to. The last thing I would offer is we continue to reach out to communities for information. On the DOT website, we have a 2022 storms page, and we have an interactive map. And if you're out there and there's damages to infrastructure that you've seen that you would like to report, there's an interface there where you can go and you can report them on our website, or there's contact information to call. So thank you. I'll hand it back to Governor Dunleavy.
So, Jeff, I think we're going to open this up to questions.
With questions here in the room. The first one comes from Zachariah Hughes with the Anchorage Daily News.
Question for the governor and Rep. Peltola. I mean, you both know these areas really well and know what kinds of facilities and possessions were damaged, and I'm wondering if there are gaps in the federal reimbursement scheme that you think this disaster is not going to be met by. I'm thinking specifically unbanked subsistence cabins, food caches, food stores, things that maybe don't fit into a lot of the national disaster relief packages. And if so, what are those areas that you think that FEMA could better understand?
We talked about that prior to the press conference. We also said that this is going to be an ongoing recovery. And what I mean by that is we have 4 weeks to get things up and running. But there's also going to be those that are going to report cabins that were damaged, fish camps that were damaged, boats, motors, anything related to either fishing, hunting, subsistence. That may be ongoing for some time to get the exact assessment on that. But I'll let the Congresswoman also talk about that. But we need that assessment. And that's, we're hoping that FEMA does reimburse for some of these things that we're talking about. But we won't know until we get the actual assessment.
I'm also very concerned about subsistence camps. And I know cabin has a recreational sound to it, I think, if you're not from Alaska. But Alaskans recognize that cabin means place where you're gathering food for your family and your extended family and your community. One of the other things that I've been thinking about is we're very thankful that there is an accommodation for a winter vehicle and a summer vehicle, but most subsistence families actually need a snow machine, a four-wheeler, and an outboard motor to really be successful and have the resources that you need to access all of the different things that we hunt and gather. So there will be families that will be weighing very carefully whether or not they can choose a snow machine or a four-wheeler or a four-wheeler and an outboard motor. So those are critical concerns. Another thing that a lot of people don't recognize is for example, my family, we have a number of boats used for a number of different types of fishing or types of hunting. And in some cases, I'm sure families have lost multiple boats and multiple four-wheelers and multiple snow machines. And again, these are not recreational vehicles. These are critical to being able to provide food security for your family. So those are the things I'm going to be watching for.
And now a question from Urith Rosen with the Alaska Beacon.
I am wondering about the 100% reimbursement request, and also following up on the subsistence question. These are things that are kind of hard to quantify. Loss of subsistence food. How does that get reimbursed or replaced or what?
I can start with the Fema Declaration. So it covers a couple of things, right? So on the public assistance side, it covers things like the costs incurred for debris removal, which we heard about, as well as the emergency measures that need to take place to make sure that these communities can sustain themselves throughout the winter months. We will eventually add on permanent repair work, and so as we continue to do assessments, then we'll be able to add additional categories of work, is what we call it, to do permanent work to things like roads and bridges and so forth. As far as the reimbursement, we're going to continue to work with our state partners to look at all of the different opportunities that we have available to make sure that we're bringing in the different federal funding streams that come from a variety of different places to make sure we're covering the costs. We all have a little bit different authorities of the things that we're going to be able to cover. On the individual side, we're going to be able to cover things like damages to their homes, sometimes some of the personal property losses. And I did fail to mention in my remarks that if individuals, they can register in those educational areas that I mentioned, they can register for assistance now, and they can go to 1-800-621-FEMA, or they can go to disasterassistance.gov to start that process.
The governor and the delegation wanted the 100% reimbursement. Is that going to happen instead of the 75%?
Yeah, so right now, the declaration is still at a 25% cost share, 75% for the federal. We're going to work together to find out what necessary resources need to come in together to support the recovery needs for these communities.
Okay, we're going to move to questions on the teleconference line. We'll take the first one from Meg Gannon with a Nome Nugget.
No questions for me right now. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to Margie Bauman with the Cordova Times. Margie?
Yeah, thank you. I'm having a little trouble with the audio, possibly because some people were too close to the microphone. How long do you expect it to take to work out the subsistence losses so that people can replace the food they lost when their electricity went out? And as far as getting boats back for the upcoming fishing seasons in months ahead, how does that work? Can you give us a little more detail, please?
So, Margie, this is Governor Dunleavy. Obviously, that's something that we're working on. That assessment, once again, is going to take a little bit of time because some of the areas we can't get to at this point. Some of the roads have been washed out. For example, Elam, a lot of boats may be down there at Moses Point. The roads are washed out. We've got to wait till we get the roads repaired to actually find out how many boats are missing or damaged. Similar situation in some areas near Nome and probably some of the other villages. So that's going to take a little bit of time. And I would imagine in some cases, some of these boats have been blown pretty far up the rivers and on the tundra that there may not be boat recovery until freeze up, where they can be brought back to the villages by sled. So it's going to take a little bit of time to actually quantify that.
Is the state or federal government going to assist in getting those boats back to those communities, and also getting food in, meat that was hunted and fish that were caught, so that people have assurance they'll have enough traditional food for the winter?
Well, I think you're going to find all.
Yeah,
I think you're going to find all of us doing whatever we can that's appropriate and reasonable. And so food is definitely a basic that we're going to be working on. And so once again, how to quantify that and when to quantify that, it's going to take a little bit of time, but that doesn't mean we're going to wait to ensure that folks have food. It's just when those losses are calculated, then we'll be able to clearly understand the magnitude of the impacts on food.
Thank you.
That's it? Last question? Okay, so I want to thank Administrator Criswell for coming up here. She came up from Puerto Rico, flew across the country, flew across the continent to be here. Obviously, they know this is an important issue, and we're just very grateful that you came up with your team. We look forward to working with you. Grateful that Congresswoman Peltola also came up from D.C., coming back home to also understand and ascertain by being on the ground here tomorrow in Nome, the magnitude of the impacts of this storm. And again, to our federal delegation, Senator Murkowski and Senator Sullivan, for working with us. We're going to get a lot done by working together, obviously. That's the plan. That's what we've been doing. And my team will be going back out there probably the 1st of October to check on the actual progress on the recovery, and so we can meet with people on the ground again. And again, we just need folks to be contacting those that are helping to supervise the recovery to once again ascertain and do an assessment on losses, on damage, and we're going to move as quickly as possible, as we mentioned. Again, Alaskans are, as was stated, very resilient. We've been through this before to some degree, and we're going to get ourselves back up on our feet sooner than later. And we have this. We have a bit of a self-imposed deadline with the freeze-up that occurs in western and northern Alaska, but nonetheless, we're moving ahead, and we are pretty positive that we'll get this recovery, a lot of this recovery, done before freeze-up for the folks in the affected areas. So, with that, I want to thank everyone for being here. We'll probably give it another report here in a few days, and the recovery continues. So, thank you, Alaska. You guys want to come?